I woke up to the gentle hum of birds chirping outside my window, the early morning light filtering through the lace curtains. Today was the day I'd been dreaming about since I was a child, my wedding day. As I stretched and glanced around my cozy childhood bedroom, a wave of excitement washed over me. Everything was going to be perfect. The preparations had been meticulous. Our venue, an idyllic countryside estate, had been booked over a year in advance. The gardens were in full bloom, a riot of colors and fragrances that seemed almost too perfect to be real. I envisioned walking down the aisle, my dress trailing behind me, every eye turning to admire. My best friend and maid of honor, Emily, burst into the room with a tray of breakfast and a huge grin. "Rise and shine, bride-to-be," she sang. We spent the next hour laughing and reminiscing as I got ready, her nimble fingers expertly weaving flowers into my hair. When I finally stepped into my dress, a vintage lace gown that had belonged to my grandmother, I felt a sense of history and continuity. It was like she was there with me, giving her blessing. I couldn't help but twirl in front of the mirror, the fabric flowing around me like a cloud. Downstairs, the house buzzed with activity. My parents were bustling about, making sure everything was perfect. My father looked dapper in his suit, and when he saw me, tears glistened in his eyes. "You look stunning, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. We arrived at the estate, and it was even more beautiful than I remembered. Guests were milling around, sipping champagne and admiring the stunning floral arrangements. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, friends from college, relatives I hadn't seen in years, all here to celebrate with us. The ceremony was a blur of emotions. I remember the feel of my partner's hand in mine, the warmth and love radiating between us. As we exchanged vows, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. My heart swelled with joy and certainty. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception area. The tent was draped in fairy lights, casting a magical glow over the tables adorned with elegant centerpieces. The band started playing our song, and we took to the dance floor. Everything was going according to plan, better than I could have hoped. But as I glanced around, soaking in the happiness and laughter, I noticed a figure standing alone at the edge of the crowd. A stranger? They seemed out of place among the familiar faces. I shrugged it off, thinking they must be a +1 of someone I didn't know well. But there was something unsettling about the way they watched me. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, I focused on enjoying every moment. The speeches were heartfelt and touching, especially Emily's. She shared stories of our childhood, our dreams and plans, and how she'd never seen me happier. My heart felt full to bursting. As the evening wore on, I felt a growing sense of contentment. This was the beginning of our happily ever after. But just as I was starting to relax, a sudden, loud crash echoed through the tent, shattering the calm. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the guests as everyone turned to see what had happened. There, at the edge of the dance floor, the magnificent wedding cake lay in ruins, toppled from its stand. A chill ran down my spine as I locked eyes with the stranger once more. Their expression was unreadable, but their presence now felt like a dark omen. The perfection of the day was starting to unravel, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Little did I know, my perfect wedding was about to turn into a nightmare. The murmurs grew louder as guests exchanged confused and concerned glances. I could see my mother rushing over to the caterers, her face a mask of worry and frustration. My father was already speaking to the staff, trying to understand what had caused the cake to fall. I took a deep breath, attempting to stay calm. It was just a cake, I told myself. We could handle this. But as I scanned the room, my eyes kept drifting back to the stranger. They had moved closer now, their eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Emily appeared at my side, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "We'll get this sorted," she said firmly, squeezing my hand. Let's just keep the party going." I nodded, grateful for her steady presence. But as the night continued, small things began to go wrong. The band suddenly stopped playing in the middle of our song, their equipment malfunctioning inexplicably. The lights flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the tent. My partner and I tried to put on brave faces, mingling with our guests and attempting to salvage the evening. But the sense of unease was growing. At one point, I overheard a heated argument between two of our relatives, voices raised in anger. It was unlike anything I had ever witnessed at a family gathering. I found myself drawn toward the stranger once more, who now seemed to be blending in with the guests, chatting casually. Yet there was something off about them, something that didn't quite fit. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were at the center of everything going wrong. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I approached Emily again. "Do you know who that is?" I asked, nodding towards the stranger. She followed my gaze, frowning. "I thought they were with someone from your side of the family." "No," I replied, my heart pounding. "I've never seen them before." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the makeshift bar. Glass shattered, and people screamed. I turned to see the bartender struggling with a guest who had clearly had too much to drink. It was chaos. The stranger was now nowhere to be seen. The uneasy feeling in my stomach turned into a knot of dread. I needed answers. Leaving the reception tent, I ventured out into the cool night air, my breath visible in the chilly breeze. The estate's grounds were vast and dark, the moon casting long shadows over the manicured lawns. I wandered towards the side of the property where the old guest house stood. It had been off limits during the wedding, a relic from another time. But something drew me there. As I approached, I saw a flicker of light inside one of the windows. Quietly, I crept closer and peered inside. My heart nearly stopped at what I saw. The stranger was there, along with two others I didn't recognize, their faces partially obscured by the dim light. They were huddled over a table, whispering urgently. Papers and photographs were scattered in front of them, photos of my partner, our families, and even me. I gasped, stumbling back. My mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want? Before I could process any further, a hand clamped over my mouth, pulling me away from the window. "Don't scream," a voice hissed in my ear. It was Emily. She released me once she saw the recognition in my eyes. "We need to get out of here," she said urgently. "Now!" I began, but she cut me off. "No time to explain. Trust me." We hurried back towards the reception tent, my mind reeling with questions. As we neared the lights and music, Emily turned to me, her face pale. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice trembling. "Your partner isn't who you think they are." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My mind struggled to keep up. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they formed was more terrifying than I could have imagined. My perfect wedding was spiraling into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to stop it. Emily's words echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my already fragile sense of reality. I looked at her, my eyes wide with shock. "What do you mean?" I demanded, my voice a whisper as we re-entered the chaotic tent. Before she could respond, my partner appeared, their face a mask of concern. "Are you all right? I was worried when you disappeared." I forced a smile, though my heart was racing. "I'm fine. Just needed a moment. Can we talk privately?" They nodded, and I led them away from the crowd, glancing back to see Emily watching us, her expression unreadable. We found a secluded spot in the garden, the sounds of the reception muted by the thick foliage. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face my partner. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Their eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course. What is it?" "Who is that stranger at our wedding? The one who's been causing all this trouble?" For a moment, their face remained impassive, but then something shifted. A flicker of recognition, quickly masked. I don't know what you're talking about, they said, their tone too casual. Don't lie to me, I snapped, surprising even myself with the force of my words. I saw them with a group of people in the old guest house. They have photos of us, of our families. What is going on? My partner's expression hardened. This is our wedding day. Can't we just focus on that? No, I replied firmly. Not until you tell me the truth. They looked away, a muscle twitching in their jaw. Fine, they said after a long pause. But you're not going to like it. As they began to speak, the story that unfolded was more harrowing than I could have imagined. My partner, it turned out, had been hiding a significant part of their past. The stranger was an old associate from a time they had tried to forget, someone who had been wronged and was seeking revenge. The photos and plans were part of an elaborate scheme to ruin the wedding, and by extension, my partner's life. They said they'd leave us alone, my partner said, their voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could trust them, but I was wrong. The betrayal cut deep, but there was no time to dwell on it. The immediate danger was clear. We need to confront them, I said, my resolve hardening. We can't let them get away with this. My partner nodded, and together we made our way back to the guest house, where the strangers were still conspiring. Emily met us halfway, a determined look on her face. I'm coming with you, she said. You're not facing this alone. The three of us approached the guest house cautiously. As we entered, the group inside looked up, startled. The stranger, their eyes narrowing with recognition, stepped forward. Well, well, they sneered. The happy couple, here to join the party? Enough games, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. We know what you're planning. It's over. The stranger laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. You think you can just waltz in here and stop us? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. My partner lunged at the stranger, and a scuffle broke out. Emily and I tried to help, but the other conspirators intervened, grabbing us and pulling us back. In the midst of the struggle, I saw a glint of metal. The stranger had a knife. My heart pounded as I realized the danger we were in. Summoning every ounce of courage, I broke free from my captor and charged at the stranger, knocking the knife from their hand. The room went silent. Everyone froze, staring at the knife now lying harmlessly on the floor. I stood over it, breathing heavily, my eyes locked on the stranger. This ends now, I said firmly. Leave and never come near us again. There was a tense moment before the stranger smirked, raising their hands in mock surrender. All right, they said. You've made your point, but this isn't over. They turned and left, their accomplices following suit. As the door closed behind them, I collapsed into my partner's arms, the adrenaline fading and leaving me trembling. We returned to the reception, shaken but determined to salvage what we could of the evening. As we rejoined our guests, who were blissfully unaware of the confrontation that had just taken place, I realized something important. Despite the chaos, the fear, and the betrayal, we had faced it together. Our wedding day had turned into a nightmare, but we had emerged stronger for it. In the end, it wasn't the perfect wedding I had dreamed of. But as I looked around at the people who loved us and the partner by my side, I knew we had something far more valuable, the strength to face whatever came our way together.